Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Sponsored by Game Time. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batista. Alongside me is Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis, Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, and 11 Alive anchor Maria Martin will be back with us next week. And of course, our Falcons Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So 1,500, 1,700, heck, 2,000 yards. We'll talk about what a breakout season for Drake looks like and talk your talk, but make sure you walk the walk. We'll download on that. Also, a buck not in the defensive backfield. In the defensive backfield, we'll explain it first. Let's talk about the great eight. So Jarvis, by all accounts, Kyle Pitts is having a good camp so far, and he seems to have a different mindset coming in this year. You talked about it on our show earlier this week, but do we have a different mindset towards him? So follow me on this one. After 6 quarterbacks and 3 different OCs, that is, if you consider Arthur Smith an OC because he was a play caller while Dave Ragone was here as OC. And then figure this, not being used the same way Kyle Pitts was in year 1 when he took 63% of his snaps at slot or wide receiver, but it seems like they're trending that way back under Zach Robinson. So maybe we need to reset our minds towards him and what the definition of a successful season looks like for KP to us.
And can we add a little bit to it? Because, I've been pretty hard on Kyle Pitts, I guess, and as far as my expectations go, they haven't been that high. But once you get a chance to look at a guy like a Michael Penix, a guy like Zach Robinson being in the second year in this offense and him having some consistency at the quarterback position,
yes.
when he had a savvy veteran in Matt Ryan. Now granted, he was on a decline in his career. I get that part of it, but he was able to get him the ball,
Yes.
And some can make an argument that, hey, he didn't have no one else to throw the football to, but there was some production there that we haven't seen in the past few years. So I think with a guy like Michael Penix saying, hey, did y'all see how I got KP to that rock today? It's going to be a lot of that. He said it so confidently. I was like, oh, my gosh, this man is a madman.
You see what I did there?
Right. You see what I did there? Just know it's not the end. So and you have a quarterback like Michael Penix trying to get him to rock like that in that capacity, it just lets you know that, my expectations probably are going to change to the point where he's going to have a good enough season to go get paid somewhere else. Now, if he has a lights out season, I still don't foresee the Falcons signing him back because you got Drake coming up, and then, down the road, you got number 7 back there. We know what type of contracts those guys are getting now, especially the elite ones. So I think he's, regardless of the end result, this is a 1-year prove it type thing for Kyle in order to be able to get the type of money that he wants. I just don't know if it's going to be here with the Falcons.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And let's start with that. First of all, most players that we see in this year, the prove it year, they ball out. I mean, that's what you see more often than not, right? So the expectation could be that maybe he's coming into this season and what you've seen in camp, because you've been out there at Flowery Branch, what you see may be a different mindset because he knows not just what's on the line for if he wants to remain a Falcon, but really what's on the line if he wants to go out into free agency and really see what the market bears. I mean, so there's a lot riding on it for him. But then also going back to something that you said as well, when we kind of look at where players are and kind of what their productivity is, we have to kind of look at it within a certain lens as well. And one of the lenses I was thinking about, Jarvis, is where are other tight ends kind of relative to where Kyle Pitts is across the league, right? So Kyle Pitts in 2024 was the 13th best as far as tight end receiver yards. Right. He was the 13th best in the NFL, right? And here's the thing. When you look at who was at the top of the food chain, guy who we're familiar with, Brock Bowers, yes, he had nearly 1,200 yards. But I think you make a great point. In that Raiders offense, he was not just the primary target, but legit, you could kind of say he was like the only target, if we're being honest.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then I think you think about the other thing, and that is looking at, say, his first season, and it was maybe Calvin Ridley's last season with the Falcons. We know how that ended, right?
Right. Yeah. No doubt.
Not
Yeah,
in a
that
good
was
way.
ugly. Right.
Exactly. So again, the weapons that were around him weren't really weapons. And the guys who typically are at the top of the food chain are in similar situations like Brock Bowers, or you might look at like a Trey McBride, where a lot of times the Cardinals had to throw their way out of a defeat, or George Kittle, same thing. The San Francisco 49ers, like security blanket. So at the end for Brock Purdy. So at the end of the day, you kind of got to look beyond just the numbers and kind of determine what Kyle Pitts' success and the definition of his success should look like. Also, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, you have to think about realistic expectations in an offense that is going to be way more catered to two wide receivers who could crack 1,000 yards, because they almost did it last year. And they almost did it with an up and down quarterback.
Right. Yeah.
And with a rookie.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like he's going to get paid at the end of this year, because you have the 9 to 5 connection. I know we're going to get into that a little bit later. By the way, it looked good, really good today. But and then you have a guy like Darnell Mooney, and then you have Bijan Robinson, and you have a two-way go with him, right? What I mean by when I say that, you can hand it off to him, and then there can be a lot of attention paid to him in that aspect, and you can dump it to him out of the backfield, and when all the attention is on 5, because I feel like he's going to be a big-time red zone threat for the Falcons this year, just barely missing double-digit touchdowns. So I think for those reasons, given what surrounds him, like you mentioned earlier, given the surrounding talent, there's going to be a lot of attention. You can't put too much attention on him. You know, I know he's 6'6", 240, running 4.4, all that good stuff. But, oh, my gosh, number 7 is dynamic. He's one of the more dynamic backs in the league. And Drake London is one of the more young and upcoming wide receivers in the league. So there's going to be some attention to pay to those guys, and especially with the arm strength that Michael Penix has, because the deep ball, they're going to try to eat off of that this year, if you did not know. So I think for those reasons, the surrounding cast is so good that he's going to be able to eat, basically because there's so much attention is going to be paid to those guys.
Indeed. And and I think it could go both ways. There are going to be some games where, like you said, he can ball out because defensive coordinators are going to be so locked into, I got to shut down Darnell Mooney, I got to shut down Drake London, and I got to make sure that when Bijan Robinson is catching balls out of the backfield, that he doesn't get to that second level either. So you got that. But on the same token, let me go in the other direction, where maybe we need to give a little grace, because there are also going to be games where Zach Robinson is like, ooh, I'm looking at the secondary for this opponent. Man, Drake is about to eat. Darnell is about to eat. And so Kyle might eat, but it may not look like as robust as you think it is, because the matchups that Zach Robinson is seeing may favor Drake and Darnell, two guys, one of whom was 8 yards away from 1,000 yards, one of whom was about 29 yards away from 1,300 yards. So at the end of the day, if those guys eat like we think they will, there may be moments in time where Kyle 8 may not look the same as what you want it to look like, which may be over 100 yards or maybe a couple touchdowns, because the defense just dictates that the other two guys can eat. But for me, Jarvis, when I look at the numbers from last year, I mean, if you can just get to double digits, like 4 touchdowns, if you can just get to like somewhere in that like 8 to 10 range, not a bad look for Kyle Pitts. If Kyle Pitts had a receiving yards of 602, I mean, even if he just upticks that, I don't need you to double up, just uptick it by a couple hundred yards so you can be in the conversation.
900 yards, 7-8 touchdowns. That's pretty solid.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to talk about it again, because I do think even me, I'm going to do just what you did and fall on the sword and sometimes say, maybe I got a little overly frustrated with Kyle Pitts. over the years, the last 2, 3, 4 years, instead of saying, okay, well, let me take a step back and figure out how other factors like scheming and like the personnel around him may have impacted how good or not so good we thought he could be on the field. Now, Jaylen Walker, let's switch gears to the defensive side of the ball, where Jaylen Walker warmed up with the team today, but is dealing with a small hamstring issue. I put that in air quotes. Now, Raheem Morris did say after practice that it's nothing long-term, but JD, granted, good to see Jaylen out there. Always good to see someone out there, even when they're dealing with a little bit of a tweak, because it's encouraging for you to believe that, hey, it is something minor. But does this make you maybe less inclined to want to see him during the preseason, if for no other reason, out of an abundance of caution?
Yeah, unfortunately, you know how I feel about Jaylen Walker. Y'all should know how I feel about Jaylen Walker. All the Georgia Bulldog fans know how I feel about Jaylen Walker. There is no person that I want to see more in these preseason games than number 11. You know, almost kind of remind me of the previous number 11. Like, he's must-see TV. I enjoy watching that dude play football. So for me, this just gives Raheem Morris an out. You know how I feel about not playing starters and all that stuff. And it's just like, oh, yep. You got a soft tissue issue? Oh, man, come on, man. Go ahead and sit on down over there. And he was out there today. He did some individual stuff, but he didn't do anything team-wise. He was walking around like a little kid. Little kid just got put on punishment. He's like, oh, man, I know it's hard. I know it's super hard because, you're watching your rookie classmate out there getting a lot of buzz, and he's out there doing some things that people probably didn't expect, and what a lot probably over expected, I guess, if that's a word. I think I made it up, but yeah, I think it's truly unfortunate, and I think that the Falcons are just being extremely cautious. So don't get too caught up in, oh my gosh, what's going on? Soft tissue lingers. Yes, it does when you continue to play on it. If you rest it, you can get right, and then be encouraged by that he's actually dressed out, and they're just holding him back, and he's versus being on the sidelines with 44. Was that a stray? I'm sorry. Did I just throw a stray?
I just want you to know I'm confirming for you that was a stray. But it's all good.
My bad.
Do. So look, I'm pulling up my phone because there's something else that you got to think about as well, right? And that is in Atlanta. Yeah, we can say what my weather app is saying right now, that it's 88 degrees. But guess what the heat index says? The heat index says it is 98, darn near 100 degrees out there.
Ooh, Lord.
Exactly, Jarvis. So think about that. Hamstring, you know how that heat is that we have to work through. And we're just standing on the sidelines watching these guys, but them going full force. Now they're in pads. Like, that's a lot.
About 10 pounds worth of weight, 5 to 10 pounds of weight. Yeah.
Exactly.
Depending on who it is. Yeah.
Right. So you think about that kind of stress and that kind of strain on a person's body, and that hammy is nothing to play with. I mean, I'm not even doing anything but working out at the gym. And even today, I have to get on the cryo machine because that hammy, it kind of like started acting funny. So I had to go with my heat and my ice. And I'm just saying that to say that's just me doing nothing, right? So imagine a guy like him doing his thing and what he's going to do, Jarvis, which is go 110, 200.
There's no dial it back a little bit. Hey, man, you can go out there, but, just kind of, that just doesn't, it doesn't work like that. Yeah.
And I got to say, I was just going to say this, but let me just give a shout out since somebody co-signed one of our audience members, Peace Smurf Blue Carpet 22. I was going to say the same thing. I feel like Jaylen Walker is that guy who's cerebral. So he's going to pick up on all the schemes quickly. You've already kind of seen that quick twitch in his mind, not just in his body. And I think when you come out of a defense, I know we probably talk about it ad nauseum, but hey, it's not just us. I heard a clip from Jalen Hurts yesterday talking about the same thing with the Eagles. There's a reason that these Georgia Bulldogs are so successful in the league from the gate, Jarvis. They're NFL ready. Yep. And so if there's any guy who you feel comfortable and confident that wherever Jeff Ulbrich decides to put him when he does get on the field, it's Jaylen Walker.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, T. It's 3rd and long. And I know 11 is perfectly healthy.
Yes.
Go get the quarterback, sir. Go in.
Period.
Worst case scenario, that's what you have to do with him.
Period.
Oh, he don't know the defense. Oh, he'll drop. Go get the quarterback. It's 3rd and 12.
Yep.
I need that. Go get
Yeah.
that. That's it. That's all
And
you gotta do.
yep.
It's pretty simple.
And I wholeheartedly believe that Jaylen Walker will understand the assignment, just like I believe Drake London will understand the assignment. So why can't he be in the combo with Jamar and Justin? We'll talk about that when we take it under further review. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're seeking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest. Some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. What's the widest shot you've ever made? Was it a total fluke or a well-calculated miracle? Has anyone in your golf group ever tried to pull off a ridiculous bet, like a crazy wager on a hole or a shot? How'd it go down? Well, I tell you, golf is good, and it's all about good times. It's all about good people, and it's all about good flavors that go down pretty easily. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse to go to without chasing down the bev card. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your first order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. So as Zach Robinson heads into his second season as offensive coordinator for the Falcons, you have to think, Jarvis, that he's really figured out how to maximize a very talented wide receiver room. Mm-hmm. Then you look across the NFL and you have 24 receivers who had 1,000+ yards receiving in 2024. 2 of those had over 1,500 yards. And you look at that top 24 and guess who was right up there at number 4? Drake London. And he was behind the guys you would expect him to be behind in Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. So now that this is round 2 for Zach Robinson, you got to think that he's at a point in place where he's priming Drake London to be able to have a breakout year to get even past his 1271 to be in that conversation with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, who are at 1,500 yards plus. How does he get there? Can he get there?
Yes, absolutely. I 1,000% believe that he can get there. Pun intended. Because, and here's why. Because I think there's a certain level of comfort that Drake has. He talked about this after practice today, talking about how, coming into your rookie year, it's almost kind of like starting over. And it's like your freshman year in high school, like your first year playing D1 ball, and then once you get into it and you kind of understand, you get that confidence level. Okay, all right, I can do this. I can be good at this. And then you come back your second year, and then third year, and then now you're in a space where you put up some really good numbers when you have a halfway decent quarterback. Now, granted, second half of the season, what happened. And then you get 9 come in those last 3 games, and then, woo, and that doggone Carolina game, you just went slap off. Oh, yes, absolutely. He can definitely do those type of numbers. You're talking about get into a space where the numbers can bore out. If you spread those out over 17 games, that is some serious production. You're talking about breaking some receiving records. So I'm not saying he's going to do that, but if Mike MPX stays healthy, if he stays healthy, and from what I've been seeing, being out here in training camp, those guys got some nice chemistry. And I think that, with the way Michael Penix throws that deep ball, that is going to be something to see as they continue to build that chemistry and build that momentum and build that what they need to have in order to be one of those deadly combinations. And that 9 to 5 type thing is going to be real because, like I said, as long as they stay healthy, as long as they have that running game going like it needs to be, there's going to be something to say about what those numbers look like once the season comes to an end.
Yeah, and I like what you said there. Again, a little shade thrown there that this is the real 9 to 5. I heard that. You caught that. Yeah, I peeped that. But I agree. No. I agree because we got all excited and happy about that 9 to 5 connection 2 years ago that never.
That wasn't me. I wasn't excited about that.
That wasn't you, Jarvis.
No,
you never fed into it.
No.
Well, I will say, check the records, everybody. Jarvis is right. Jarvis, yes.
Find the clips, baby.
You had trepidation. I was not
excited about that.
Yeah, I was all optimistic, and then I started falling off the cliff slowly but surely. Yes. But yeah, let's. You make a great point about looking into those numbers and kind of seeing, and that kind of goes into our second question as well, the follow-up question, because when we look at those tandems, right, or we look at the Cincinnati Bengals.
Joe Burrow.
And what right. Like Joe Burrow balled out so much in the second half trying to throw the Bengals into the postseason that Jamar Chase's numbers look like what they look like, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
But Jamar Chase's numbers and Joe Burrow's numbers and the Bengals' ability to get into the postseason, which, they missed it by a hair, but their ability to get into the postseason was predicated on two solid receivers. They had to have T. Higgins. That 1-2 punch is really what would keep them in the conversation of greatness, if you will. So I think when it comes to Drake London, like you said, I think that the camaraderie, the chemistry that we're already seeing between Michael Penix Jr. and him is what is needed in order to get them to that next level. And we know that Michael Penix Jr. has said, don't limit me, Zach Robinson. I'll roll out to the left. I'll roll out to the right. I'll roll out wherever I need to get it into the hands of my receiver. And so I think that I love that connection. But Jarvis, I would venture to say as well, and you tell me what you think, it could be the most important one in Rob's offense, but I almost think there's a cosign like a 1A and 1B because we've seen from those wide receivers that are at the top of the food chain, also like an Amon-Ra St. Brown that comes to mind. And even the Eagles, it's the 1-2 punch with the high-powered offenses that we end up seeing going into the postseason, such that I think London is a 1A and Mooney is a 1B as far as the importance of the connectivity in Rob's offense.
Yeah, and because, and I'm speaking hypotheticals. Well, I can speak in real life, right? So say, for instance, they win and play the game tomorrow. I don't know if Darnell Mooney will probably be able to go at this point, right? Because Coach talked about a few weeks, kind of waffle back and forth. I was like, which one is it, Coach? All right, I'm trying to figure it out. But when you think about if they had to go into a game tomorrow, okay, so who's going to take Darnell Mooney's spot? Are we looking at a DJ Chark? Are we looking at a Ray McLeod? Is he going to be lining up? Or can you move Drake London to the X? Yes, you can, but Drake London is really good at the Z, and that's that Puka Nacua type role when going in motion and being able to seal off those edges and not being obvious on offense because it just would throw a monkey wrench in a lot of things if a guy like Darnell Mooney is not in there because it just changed. You basically have to change what you do. So with that, like I think it's very important because once you get into trying to change guys' roles, and not necessarily having a fill-in or a twin body to throw in there, it changes things up. And I think that when you have, that's why it's very important to answer your question that you have those guys, that tandem in there, because can you line Kyle Pitts up at the X? Sure, but is he going to be a deep threat like Darnell Mooney? And I answer that question. No, it's not. It's not going to happen. I know he can run fast and he's big and all that stuff, but Darnell Mooney is a different animal. That's why you saw it last year and he immediately came in and was productive. So, yeah, I think that tandem is very important to the success of this offense and where it goes in year two as with Zach Robinson as the play caller.
But you actually mentioned something else that I talked about on my show last night, and it was with the Bengals radio analyst, right? And so we talked about Jamar Chase and we talked about T. Higgins, but I asked him how important was that third receiver in what that Bengals offense is able to do. And I asked him particularly about Andre Yashavas. And when I tell you, or Yoshevas, when I tell you that he lit up talking about that guy as being the X factor, because Jamar's going to get his, T's going to get his. And then there are going to be moments where there are defenses that are schemed perfectly to shut them both down. Right. So what do you do with that guy, or what do you do with Chase Brown coming in as potentially your fourth receiver, because he's become a solid catcher out of the backfield? And like I said, when he began to talk about Andre, like you could hear him lighting up, talking about the importance of that third receiver in a high-powered offense. So that goes back to what you were saying just a moment ago, but also something that Raheem Morris referred to a little bit earlier today as well. And that is kind of looking beyond wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 and seeing where the value can be in that third guy. And also by them trying to mix it up where there's quote unquote, not necessarily you're locked in to a true first and a true second team at this point in camp. He was referencing David Sills. Okay. Then you look down the depth chart and you really start to think about, okay, outside of Drake London, outside of Darnell Mooney, especially if Darnell's not a go, who is that third guy where you feel most confident that he can just go off, and then kind of who rounds out that wide receiver room?
It has to be Ray, right? Because, you know, he's built to beat man coverage. I know, don't laugh at me when I say this, but he's one of those little cockroach wide receivers and just little scat guys. And, you know, just imagine turn the lights on and you seeing that little mofo running around, you know, and all over the place. That's Ray McCloud. He's that type of guy, and he can beat one-on-one coverage. But that's what you want your third wide receiver to do. Now, obviously, when you're talking about trying to find a different matchup, you can put your best wide receiver in the slot and match them up against the nickel corner. That's why the nickel corner position is so important nowadays, because offensive coordinators are getting super creative with trying to find the matchup. And we're just going to beat you because we know you have to play man right here, or we know that you're going to be matched up with a linebacker on the inside. So that's the main role of a third wide out. And Ray McCloud, he fits that. And I think that, you know, it's just a matter of him staying consistent, staying within the system and what they ask him to do. They'll be more than, you know, equipped to have that depth. But like you said, once you go 1, 2, 3, if any one of those guys gets hurt, then that's when you start to, okay, all right, then you start playing checkers and chess and trying to move all type around, and then you kind of lose your identity because you can't do what you did because you don't have the good pieces that you already have, and those guys are true fits for what the roles that they have in his offense.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that third person as well, because low key, when you start looking a little bit deeper, like past the top 10 wide receivers in terms of receiving yards, then you start to see maybe like 11 through 20, you'll see that second wide receiver in that team's particular scheme. But what I thought was of note that was interesting, especially with the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles, that third receiver is right there within that top 30. So when you start thinking about that, Jarvis, and you start thinking about those potent offenses, and I'm going to go back to it over and over again, JD's recipe for success, what did we say, 27 and a half?
28. We had 28 now, too. We going up. Yeah, we got to catch up. We up to half a point, baby. We up to 28 points a game, man. That's where I'm at right now. That was like, I was at 26, 27 before practice started, you know, and then once I start seeing 9 throw all those darts around the field, I was like, oh, let me go ahead and bump this up just a little bit, you know, because they averaged 27 points in those 3 games that he played in. So hey, we right on the line, baby.
Right, but you're not wrong also, because when you look at some of those teams that are in sort of the bottom half or the bottom quarter of the NFL averaging points per game, it's 22. When you start looking at the top teams in 2024, they're approaching 28. And those are still teams with valuable defenses, by the way. Absolutely. But they still have very, very potent offenses. And then, when, like I said, when you start looking at those wide receiver numbers and you look past the top 10, where obviously your wide receiver 1, for the top teams in the league last season are going to be in the top 10. And then in most instances, wide receiver 2 is maybe 11 to 20, 11 to 25. Then you start seeing wide receiver 3 in those numbers before you even see wide receiver 1 from some of the middling teams or some of the bottom third teams in the league last season. That's very telling to me. So I just think that all of those things said, when you start to look at the yards, wide receiver 1, 2, and 3, and you look at the success of those teams in totality from last season, yeah, it's okay to feel like Drake London should have a breakout season, but a healthy Darnell Mooney should kind of break out and get past 1,000 yards as well. And we ought to be having a conversation about wide receiver 3, whoever is next in line, getting right up there. But that's some talk, walk the walk. We know Drake London can do it. We were told by little birdie, somebody else can too. We'll unpack that in Next Up. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier with Monarch Money? It can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. How has everything in one app made it easier to manage your money day to day? Let us know, because I think you're going to see that Monarch Money gives you that type of freedom. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Check out monarchmoney.com. So Leonard Floyd warned the media to not be fooled by Michael Penix Jr.'s calm demeanor. We always talk about a brother being real laid back, nothing really ruffles his feathers. He just kind of goes about his business. However, Leonard Floyd says, Penix, we'll talk that ish. Are you surprised that MPX actually has a little edge?
Not at all, T. Like, those are the ones you have to be concerned about. The ones who don't say anything, the ones who are calm. Like, you know, if you put me and my brother and I together, you won't know he's in the room unless you're actually looking at him, right? Because he doesn't say much, but he's the one you got to be concerned about. Yeah, you know, you might need to be concerned about me. Yeah. I can do some damage. But the one that doesn't say anything, that he kind of reminds me of, bro, like that quiet, cool, confident guy. And when you think about that, that's, to me, that's what gets me excited, because there's one thing to be they outwardly braggadocious and telling everybody what you about to do and all that stuff. I Phillip Rivers comes to mind, because you know how Randy always talking about how Phil, as he affectionately refers to him as, just talk that trash. He just be talking trash, the D-line and all that stuff, all up and down the line. He's gonna talk trash all game. But it's one thing when a guy maybe throws a 65-yard bomb and he starts jogging down the field and he leans over to the defensive lineman and said, I told you, I'm gonna get y'all. And just keep on moving. It's just like, it's something different. It just hits a little different when you have a guy like that who's 95, 97% calm, and then all of a sudden when he gets out on the field, he's like a stone cold killer, a sniper, and then he runs right by you and just said, yep, it's all day, baby. And just keep it moving. It's just, that's different. That's different than the guy who's just constantly jabbing at his mouth. So yeah, I love it, T. I absolutely love it.
Me too. And we talked about this a little bit earlier in the week. How like, and even last week, right? Where edge looks a little different on everybody. We gave some love finally to Caleb McGarry and said, okay, let's talk the truth. Caleb McGarry has edge. It just looks different than maybe Drake London's edge. And so it's okay for it to be in different iterations. So personally, I like a trash talker, because as long as you back it up, I'm good. And I truly believe, Jarvis, that those 3 games we saw last year showed you that Michael Penix Jr. can back up his trash talk, right?
Absolutely.
Also, you know me. I've been a lot of places, lived a lot of places, seen a lot of things, and I'm always very curious.
Especially in New Jersey.
Yes, exactly. So with my Jersey eyes,
Yes.
for my years in New Jersey, and
Indeed.
for my Ninth Ward telescope for my years in New Orleans. I'm always interested to see what a background kind of dictates for a guy. He's
Right.
from Dade City, Florida. Dade City has one of the highest crime rates in all of Florida. So you better be about that life, making sure that you can look over your shoulder and making sure you're good, right? Now he went to Tampa Bay Tech, a little bit of a magnet school. Obviously, we know Michael Penix is a smart cookie,
Absolutely.
but still, I worked in Tampa. I know Tampa Bay Tech. You don't come to play with those guys.
Yes.
That's all I'm
See,
saying.
here's the thing, T. When it comes to like cats from Florida, first of all, let me say this. I played with a lot of cats from Florida, and 95% of them were different. Like just
different.
They had something special about them on the field, right? And then they had something for you if you wanted to get weird off the field. So when I hear about this quiet confidence and this trash talking low key, I'm not surprised at all. Like when you walk up on a guy like Michael Penix, like you wouldn't really expect what he does out on the field, and you wouldn't expect that he'll be a trash talker. But like when you kind of understand the background, like when you kind of put your specs on, I can put my West Side of Atlanta specs on. I'm just like, yeah, bro. If I'm going to a back alley, you probably won't be my first pick, but I'm sure gonna make sure you're on the squad. if it's about to get ready to go down, I want to make sure that I got a guy like that on my team. And then especially when you're talking about getting up on the center. So yeah, this is. I'm not surprised when I'm put a Terry Fontenotism out there. You talk about the makeup, the makeup of a player. Like I understand why the Falcons fell in love when they flew out to Washington to watch him try him out. I understand. I get it. I totally understand.
Yeah, because he's maybe what we could affectionately say might be a little bit of a new look Falcon, right? Because we always talk about that Falcon ethos and how sometimes maybe leaning into it too much gets this team in trouble because unfortunately they are maybe looking too much for the good guy. But sometimes there's a good mix that you need. You may not want the guy that completely and totally, like they may not be comfortable with the guy that completely and totally, as Jarvis will say, quote, is not one he wants his daughters to bring home ever in life. Now the Falcons, they'll probably never lean into that guy if we're being honest. But if you could lean just a little bit closer to that guy, meaning that he is the one who you feel like would be a ride or die in a game situation or out of a game situation, then I think they'll see that a little edge never hurt anybody, like at all. But
I might buy an extra pistol. Like I'll allow him to date my daughter, but I buy an extra gun.
You would, right? But I'm saying they don't want that guy, right? But whoever that guy is, and we're not saying, by the way, guys, that that's Michael Penix Jr. So don't
not at all.
But what we're saying is Michael Penix Jr. might be a nice middle ground because the Falcons have always leaned in this direction of the guy who was like the good guy, like maybe the ethos was just a little too much. The Falcons were never going to be like kind of the Eagles where they'll take a chance on the guy who Jarvis wouldn't want to come to dinner. But I think if you got the guy in the middle,
I got a name that pop immediately in my head. JC. That's all I'm gonna say.
Exactly.
Yeah, come on, son. You ain't coming to my dinner table, but you sure about to get ready to get this bread on my field.
Exactly. But that guy never would be taken by the Falcons in all likelihood. But the guy in the middle, I think that guy who shows edge when it's needed, when it's necessary. A Caleb McGarry, as we talked about before. It looks different, but when he's in run protection, that's when you see all the edge you need to see. Or Drake London, who's not about to let you do anything to anybody on his side of the field while he's on the field. That's the kind of guy you want. But speaking of that, Jarvis, before we move on, you said it, so I have to ask about it.
Okay.
You said that Michael Penix Jr., although we feel like he's got that edge, he's about that life, don't cross him, he still wouldn't be the first person that you take into the battle with you? Who's the first Falcon then? I got to know.
Oh, gosh.
I'm talking about current Falcons too. We can't go to the past. We know we got enough candidates from the past that we would take into the fight with us.
So follow me, right?
Okay.
I'm I'm a strategist when it comes to fighting. You know what I'm saying? Like, not that I get into fights all the time. I don't want anybody to get any
Right, in
wrong
your
impressions
previous
about
life.
me. But
In your
I've had
previous
in my heathen days, there was a sense of strategy that I brought to the fighting table. I want just never will be a guy just to drop the gloves and just go throw hands. No, nope, I'm not into that type of stuff. So it depends on time, place, and all that stuff. But if I'm thinking about the first Falcon that I would grab and say, if I knew someone was about to get ready to jump on my head around the corner, in the back alley, first person I'm going to, T. James Pierce Jr. Yeah, I might have to do that. I'm sorry. It's gonna be James Pierce Jr. I'm going with JPJ. Yep.
Right, but that's understandable because
Yeah.
JPJ and listen, Raheem Morris came back and said that he loved what he saw in the reset of James Pierce Jr. after he got into the little clusterfuffles with Ryan Newsel and Caleb McGarry and Matthew Bergeron. So I love the fact that we saw the other side, because then that goes to the cerebral piece that you and I are talking about, like be smart, be strategic about when and where you're going to get into these spaces and places. So I don't think that's a bad call. I don't think it's a bad call because again, he shows you that he goes 110%. Like when he puts his foot to the pedal, it's real hard to bring it back.
Number two, though, T. One number two.
You know what? Since you're on a roll, I'm just gonna let you go.
See my second one. See, I got the length right now, so no guns, we're going old school style with it. So I'm bringing JPJ with me. I got to go onto the offensive line. Give me Matthew Bergeron. I got to go Matthew Bergeron. Dude, come from Canada, hockey background, all that stuff. Like, those guys get after it. So if we have to kind of get in close comfort, you know what I'm saying? Get maybe a little wrestling going on. Yeah, I want 65 out there, So I got my guy with the length. So if you want to run up, he can pop, 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 you know what I'm saying? Back up, all that stuff. But if we got to get the tussling, I got to bring Matthew Bergeron to the fall.
And I got to bring one more in. And yes, I'm co-signing on both of those for the very rationales that you mentioned.
Indeed.
But if I need my guy who somehow I got into the situation sooner than I thought I would, and I need backup to come in quick,
okay,
I think he has enough edge and speed to get there and make sure I'm good. It's Drake London.
Oh, my light-skinned brethren, yes. Sign me up. I'm all in for that. Like, I 100% put my stamp on that one. That is, yes, that's the JD approval right there. Yeah, give me Drake. Because the other Drake, I definitely wouldn't bring to a fight. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even be hanging around that guy. I don't care if I had the opportunity to. He's just not a guy that I would like to hang around.
Don't even tell him where the fight is. Right. Don't tell him, look, we ride it.
Fight.
Tell everybody else we ride it, Dawn. Tell him we ride it like 2:45.
Yes. Yeah, we all gone. We all back at the house chilling and let him show up.
Debriefing about what already happened at dawn.
But pay the lawyer fees. How about that? Yeah, we'll let him pay the lawyer fees.
But I love it too, because there's also a thread about those three guys that we mentioned that we're going to see pay dividends on the field. And we've actually already seen it pay dividends on the field, particularly with Drake London and Matthew Bergeron. Because when you talk about Matthew Bergeron, you're talking about an O-lineman where there's really no stat per se to look at to see how effective that person is. And when there are the little, I like to call it kind of the dirty work that you have to do, you're never going to see that show up in a stat line for an offensive lineman. So I do think there's a thread with the people that we're talking about, because there are also going to be some things, there have been rather some things that Drake London has done as a wide receiver, blocking and just making sure that the play continues. So I think, So
he takes pride in that.
He takes pride in it. Yes.
In the first day of pass, 11 on 11, I remember it vividly. Going in motion, came back cross, and then as soon as the ball was snapped, he was like right there on the edge. Pop! That doggone defensive end. And then he just stood over him. I was like, ooh, them fighting words. But ain't nobody bucked back though. So yeah, that's what you like. You expect that type of stuff from Drake. Like, it wasn't a surprise. I was just like, oh man.
But you just like it when you see it.
I just love it. I get excited when I see that type of stuff. So yeah, Drake is it's fun when you think about diva wide receivers.
Yeah.
He is the total opposite of that.
Anti-diva.
He puts up the
Totally.
numbers that diva wide receiver. I feel like he's gonna put up the numbers that diva wide
Sure.
receivers put up, but he's gonna bring that extra. Like when you like the offensive coordinator like Zach Robinson. I know I'm gonna say he should love him, but I know he does.
Yeah.
Like to be able to have the option to have that guy as an extra blocker and an option for you in the pass game.
Yep.
That's going to drive defensive coordinators crazy.
It truly
really? They're going to drive them crazy because there's we all how we always talk about how obvious Arthur Smith was.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a stray? I don't know.
That's
yeah. Becoming obvious on offense. You're not going to hear that with a guy like Drake and what he's capable of doing while he's on the field. So this is these are
the little things that take a team.
Yep.
Exactly. This takes you from middling to good. This takes you from good to great when you start to see players consistently like a Drake London, like a Caleb McGarry, a Matthew Bergeron, and you hope James Pierce Jr. as well, doing the little things that Jarvis, Maria, Tori, Aaron, and I will never talk about on the squad shows or the post game because they won't be in the stats. So we're not going to be talking about it stat-wise, but you'll hear a consistent line across the entirety of the season about what these guys did to make sure this team gets a W. And that's what it's really about. In addition to the 28 points and all the stats that we talked about with Drake London, the bottom line is there are going to be these extra moments where Drake London has to make a key block, or Caleb McGarry has to just show a little nasty in the trenches, or Matthew Bergeron has to do the same, or JPJ has to knock somebody off so that they think twice, that OC thinks twice before he puts that particular play back on the field. That's how you start seeing this team win games in a fashion that, to me, is sustainable, be above and beyond just the pads. Now, the Falcons made a roster move for their secondary, but was it the right one? We'll talk about it on the other side. So, Jarvis, the Falcons announced Wednesday that they did sign UFL safety Henry Black, of course, in a corresponding move released wide receiver Makai Polk. But here's the interesting thing. According to NFL Network's Mike Garafolo, veteran safety Jordan Whitehead visited with the Falcons Wednesday. Whitehead, of course, is a former starter for the Bucs, injured in a car accident back in January, but still received a full medical clearance. Now, we haven't gotten any more word about how that went with Whitehead, so who knows? Maybe it wasn't a fit. Maybe it was a money issue. Maybe he's going back to the Bucs. Who knows? But ultimately speaking, the Falcons decided to pursue Henry Black. So what are your thoughts on Henry Black as a signing and on the possibility that maybe the Falcons could have had Whitehead?
I mean, I look at it from the standpoint of this is just a depth signing. I don't think this was, oh my God, Xavier Watts suck. Let's get another safety here. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's to that extreme. I think there's just the standpoint of you just want to get a guy in that has some experience, extra body, a guy who pretty much what you're going to get from him. So I think it's more of a kind of moving some numbers around, and maybe you have to believe the Falcons had 4 safeties before they signed, and they end up cutting Makai Polk. So, hey, instead of us having an extra wide receiver that we're probably not going to get any real reps from, let's go ahead and cut that guy, and let's bring in a guy like Henry Black who can potentially do some stuff for us on the defensive side of the football, maybe on special teams. So I think this is more so of a depth signing. So I think that bring a guy in like that, and Jordan Whitehead might have looked at the depth chart and said, hey, man, I know I'm not going to play. Y'all just drafted the 3rd round safety that y'all really like. And, and you got Jordan Fuller, who was in Raheem's system when he was with the Rams. So, yeah, he probably said, you know what? I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to move on. And then they bring in the guy like Black, who was out there today at practice, already dressed out. So he was ready to roll. So I think this was more so of a depth signing. No real significant something's wrong, so let's get a guy in here. But I think this is more so making sure you have a veteran guy that's got some experience in this league. Yeah.
And in case you guys were wondering where Maria is, because of course Jarvis and Maria have been at Flowery Branch for all of training camp, Maria is still out there, or was still out there because there were a few more players who were speaking, but of course we got the show started. So I just wanted to share something with you guys that Maria just posted, because I think this speaks so much to what we were just talking about. So I'm just kind of sharing it for kicks and giggles, but definitely give your reaction. So Drake, London, was a little bloody. He had a scrape on his forearm, not a big deal, but of course Maria asked about it and he said, I know. Have you ever seen something like this? I'm bleeding Falcons. Just love that guy.
Hey, look,
Did we just talk about it?
Hey, being nothing wrong with being a company man in a contract guarantee. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey,
and nothing wrong with getting a little scraped up, nicked up, whatever it takes.
Ooh, I'm willing to bleed for this thing. You know, give me that $35-40 million a year in contract. Y'all ready to bleed for that? Sign me up. Matter of fact, I don't even need no Band-Aid. I'm gonna let it bleed out. You know what I'm saying? I need to calm down a little bit, because hey, once I sign this contract, I'm a Falcon for life, baby.
Yeah,
I'm invested.
I am invested. I'm out here bleeding Falcons. I'm out here bleeding for the Falcons. Like, okay, Drake, we see you.
Dusting these corners back on a weekly basis, man. Come on, let's go. Shoot.
Exactly. I'm doing my thing. I'm definitely doing my thing. And then I know you were out there as well this week, and it was a fun week because you finally got to see those guys put the pads on. But what were some of maybe those takeaways for you? Maybe some little nuggets that you took away from being at Flowery Branch that you'd love our audience to know about?
T. So, you know, I got this excitement in my soul right now, and I'm trying to contain myself, because
you sound like you're about to break out into a gospel song. But okay.
Oh, look, I'm sounding like Kurt Franklin ramping up in the family. Oh boy. But seriously though, I think, you know, there was a point in practice today. They were running a 2-minute drill. The second team offensive line was in. 27 and 98 were in. For those who don't know, James Penix Jr., Ruka Rororo. They were teeing off. To the point where somebody had to call the dogs off. I don't know who did it, but somebody called them off, because I know when a defensive lineman is going full speed, you know, because especially when I saw it the play before, when 27 was tagging 18 and 98 was rolling because he had beat his man so badly and ended up tripping up at Kirk Cousins' feet. I know what, dial it back a little bit so we can get a good look, guys. And then that's exactly what happened the next play. So yeah, when you get to that point where that defensive line is wrecking like that,
yeah.
I mean, how long before the season start? I mean, because I don't know. I don't know if these guys, if 27 keeps playing like this and doing what he's doing out here in practice, if Ruka Rororo keeps doing what he's been doing out here, I don't know if we're gonna see these guys in preseason. And I don't know, I'll probably be a little sad, because I want to see those guys go up against another team. But you know, thankfully, we have the joint practices. They getting ready to get here. It's a little ways away, but you know, hey, I got something to look forward to. Yeah, it's coming fast. It's gonna be here before we know it. So, but yeah, that was my big takeaway from today's practice. They had to call the dogs off essentially, so they can get a look. I mean, now you want to have a conversation on the other side of that. Man, our second team offensive line that bad? You know, it's probably a balance. You know what I'm saying? It's probably a little balance. Like, okay, yeah, they're taking advantage of guys that aren't starters. Yeah, there's some of that. But, oh, my gosh, they're actually doing it.
You know? But they're doing right. They're actually doing it. Yeah. So, and yeah, all you Falcons fans, go in the prayer closet is what Jarvis is saying for that second unit. Go in the prayer closet. That's the first unit O-line.
I just asked a question. I just posed a question.
No. What I heard was everybody go into the prayer closet for the O-line, praying specifically Jake Matthews, Matthew Bergeron, Ryan Newsel, Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGinn. Like, pray their names out loud. That's what Jarvis said, everybody.
Get all that oil. Yeah, I know what oil I'm talking about. Go get that oil.
Yep.
Cause woo, Lord, we don't want to see
so
that.
if anybody sees Jarvis in the locker room sprinkling some oil in certain spaces, 76, locker 67, don't be shocked, man. Just let him do it. Let him do his thing. Let him do his thing.
Yeah,
But
it's so funny because like it got to a point where I was like, this is ridiculous. Like he was James Pierce was lined up on Jack Nelson. You know, I was like, hey man, that's not fair. But hey man, you in the league, bro. You got to get those reps, and I'm sure he's gonna learn from those reps because.
I'm sure. So we got a question from one of our guys. I just wanted to answer that because you were out there the last couple of days, and he asked, "How's Braylon Trice doing?"
I think I like what I see from Braylon. There was this one instance where, you know, you kind of there's so much going on out there. Like you have to really focus in on if you're looking for a specific player, you need to really focus in on that guy. And he was lined up against Caleb McGarry. It was a run play, and so the ball snapped, come out the ball real quick. You know, kind of got his hands on Caleb and then disengaged really quickly and just tagged out the running back because they're not hitting out there. So and it was just a quick TFL. And I was just like, yes, that's the type of stuff that's the type of explosion you want to see, especially from a guy coming off an injury that he had to deal with. And I talked to him after Tuesday's practice, and he was just because there's an adjustment period when you are coming off that injury, and a lot of times, and some people don't like to subscribe to this, but you really don't get back fully healthy, fully to what you were before, or if you get back to that level until that year after, you come back. So, and he was like, nah, man, I feel like I'm 100%. And when I heard that and I got a chance to actually see him looking like that guy that he was when he was coming out of UW. So it's going to be interesting to see what reps look like for him.
Yeah.
Because that room is crowded. Yeah, Arnie Ebiketie, you have Jaylen Walker, you have JPJ. The edge room is super crowded. And he said that, hey, competition is competition. And I think that I love that. Like the competition is going to breed something I feel pretty special. If you're getting solid production from him, that lets me know that, hey, those other guys are getting it too. Those other guys are getting after it. Arnie Ebiketie is getting after him. Aaron has talked about AK and how he feel like he can be a double-digit sack guy. If you're getting that type of production from him, you already know everybody else eating. And because it's going to be like a party at the quarterback if you got guys like Braylon Trice doing what I feel like he could do.
Yeah, and all the guys you mentioned too have different levels of motivation, but nonetheless motivation. In the case of, like you said, of Braylon Trice, the motivation is I never really got to touch the ball last year. I never got an opportunity to show what I was worth. Rook Aroro. We saw flashes, we saw glimpses, but the continuity just wasn't there. So he's looking for his opportunity. And then you look at a guy like Arnold Ebiketie, and we saw, I don't even want to say flashes, like we really started to see him shine. Like we really started to see him show up. But going into that fourth year, do you get to see the AK that was worthy of a second round pick? So yeah, you have so many guys in that room who have some high level motivations to get some snaps and get some quality snaps and do something with it.
No doubt. And I think that AK and Kyle Pitts are in similar situations. Obviously, magnitude is like times a million. When you get drafted 4th overall, highest draft tight end in the NFL draft era, there are a lot of expectations that come with that. So I think once you get this far deep into your career or your first rookie your rookie contract, like the way you were drafted kind of goes away. I feel it should go away, and then you just evaluate a player for what they are. Yeah. And I feel like Kyle Pitts can be a productive tight end in his league. Is he a game-changing tight end? No, because I haven't seen it yet. And more than likely, you're not going to see it. So, even if he does have a breakout year. So I feel like AK is a guy that can be a productive pass rusher because he's steady, gotten better as we've gone along since he's been in the league. And even with changing schemes and learning different defensive coordinators and all that stuff, all that aside, he's still gotten better as he's gone along. So yeah, I think people forget about that once. If he has like a 7-8 sack year, that's solid.
Yeah.
Is it worth where he was drafted? Who cares?
Yeah.
He's been a productive sack getter since he's been in the league.
Yeah, agreed. And real quick, 2 more, and then we're going to wrap up. But 2 more questions from Larry, from Southside Ricky. They wanted to know what you thought about Brandon Dorlus and Billy Bowman this week.
Dorlus has been pretty solid. He's been paired with David Onyemata. They've been pairing those guys off on the interior part of the defensive line. I think that, I'd be interested to see where he settles. I think this is one of those things where Dorlus is going to be a solid rotational guy, and that's all you can ask for a mid-round pick, right? True. So if he's able to do that and get some production, I think it'd be fine. Billy Bowman is my favorite guy that they drafted as far as in the secondary in this particular draft. He's being aggressive. They're gonna send him. He's gonna be one of those guys, and I think it's a perfect fit for him in his defense because he's a former safety, a little bit too light in the dumper to play on the back end of a defense in the NFL, but perfect for a nickel because you can have he brings that run support because he's used to coming downhill and making those tackles from the nickels. So he'll be able to do that from the nickel spot, which I think he'll be able to flourish in that role.
Indeed. Good stuff coming out of training camp for the first week that these guys are in their pads. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcon Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked on Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen. He'll be back with us next week, along with Maria Martin, who, of course, hosts Sports Extra on Sundays on 11 Alive. And you can catch Jarvis as a frequent contributor for Locked on Falcons and Sports Extra. We'll see you next time.